Well, hey guys, welcome back to the art room. Mrs. New here. Today we are going to be making handled mugs. So we are going to be making hot cocoa cups, coffee cups, tea cups, whatever you want to call it. These are nice mugs for hot beverages with a handle. So let's get started. So there's two different shapes that you can make for your mug project. The first one is just a cylinder that is straight up and down. So here are a couple examples of that. And to make the straight up and down cylinder mug, you guys are going to be using a form. So the forms that we're going to use, there's two different ones. There's a PVC pipe, which has been cut into pieces, or just a regular old tin can. So whatever form you choose, think about the diameter of your cup. How big of a mug do you want? Usually the tin can is a little bit smaller and the PVC pipe makes a nice big coffee cup. Now the other shape of mug you can make is more of a tapered shape. So it is a little bit, sorry I've got all my pencils in here, but it's a little bit wider on the top and a little bit narrower on the bottom. And it has more of a taper to it. If you want to make this kind of shape, you guys are going to be using a template. So there's templates and forms. What's the difference? Well, usually a template is just a piece of paper. For Miss New's class, I have usually laminated pieces of paper that you just trace around the shape. So for example, this one says latte mug, and you can see it's kind of an arced shape. It's a laminated piece of paper. So this is called a template, and we use lots of different templates to make slab forms in ceramics 1, 2, and 3. So this is an example of a template. Something that is a physical thing like a Campbell soup can or the styrofoam meat tray when we make trays is considered a form. So if you're actually taking the clay and draping it around or into something, that's a form. If you're simply tracing around a shape, that's a template. So now that we know the difference between templates and forms, you need to kind of decide what you want to do. If you want to use the forms, I do have a little bit of a cheat for you, and that is if you are using the PVC pipe, that's upside down. If you are using the PVC pipe, I already kind of measured out how much clay you're going to use, so technically I do have a template for the PVC pipe. But the nice thing about using the PVC pipe is I can actually physically wrap the clay around this. Now if I'm using one of these shapes, I have nothing to wrap it around. I'm basically just going to take the clay and whoop, just kind of push it up and make it into that shape. So I would say using just a template is a little harder to do. But if you are going to use the PVC pipe, find the one that says PVC pipe, and that will tell you approximately how much clay you're going to need. Another thing I want you to think about for your cup design is, what's the design going to be? Are you going to stamp in WHS, some kind of letters? Maybe it's a name for a friend or a family member. Are you going to put some lace doilies on there and use that as a texture? Are you going to maybe paint a design? That is an option. Or are you going to use one of the pre-made texture mats? So think about what the design of your cup is going to be. Think about maybe who it's going to be for and what it's going to be for. Are you going to use it for tea, hot cocoa, coffee? What do you think? So once you've figured out kind of the design of your cup, you need a slab of clay. Now by this time in the class, hopefully you're somewhat familiar with how to roll a slab, but if you still need help with that process, please come grab me or one of the teacher's assistants. If you are going to use one of these forms, it's very, 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 very important that you wrap around the form either a piece of dry paper towel or a piece of saran wrap plastic. The reason for that, if you forget that step, you're going to have your clay all wrapped around this and it's going to stick. So you've got to use either a dry paper towel or a piece of plastic wrap. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, so this is the box of plastic wrap that we have in the classroom. And the way that this works is you want to find the end here. You're going to pull up and then pull down on the serrated edge of the plastic wrap box, okay? And get yourself a piece of saran wrap or plastic wrap. Now I can take that saran wrap, let's say I was using this cup here or this can, and I can just stick that around, and that way my clay will not stick. If I'm using the paper towel method, I have to work a little bit faster because the paper towel will get wet from the clay. But what I'm going to do is take the paper towel, I'm going to wrap it around the PVC pipe like this, and then I'm going to tape the paper towel to the paper towel. So I've got a little piece of tape here, and then I can kind of tuck in the ends like that. Now again, if I use this paper towel is going to get wet faster than the plastic wrap. But you need to have one or the other if you're going to use a form for this project. So I've got my clay all rolled out, and I want to go ahead and smooth it out and decide what kind of design I'm going to do. Am I going to do a texture mat? Am I going to stamp a word? What kind of design might I want to do for this project? And I think for mine, I'm going to use the lace doilies for texture. So before you shape your cup, you want to add your texture. So in this little box, I have some pieces of lace and what are called doilies. So you might have seen these before, putting your cup on there so you don't get a mark on the table. Pieces of lace work really well for this as well. So I think maybe I'll use this piece of lace and I'll just lay it onto my clay slab, and I'm going to use my rolling pin. Now this is going to make a really nice texture on the slab, and it's something different to use besides just the pre-made texture mats. I could just also stamp in a texture. There's different rollers in the class I can use. So really look through all the different tools and do something different that you haven't done before. So now that I've got my texture on there, I can decide, again, am I going to use one of the templates that look like this, or one of the templates that says PVC pipe. Now for my demo, I'm going to show you this one so I can kind of show you how to use that form. I'm going to lay this on my clay, and I'm going to reserve this side of my clay. So I have some extra right here, and I want to keep that extra, and I'll show you why in a minute. Now what I'm going to do is just take my needle tool, and I'm going to go ahead and, holding this down onto the clay, I'm just going to draw the shape on here first. If I start cutting, then, sometimes I might mess up. So I think it's always a good rule to just draw it on first before you make any cuts. And that way, if you mess up, you can smooth it out and you don't have to roll out a whole new slab. So now that I've got this drawn on here, I can go ahead and cut it. I could use a fettling knife, or I could use a needle tool to do this part. And I'm going to try to follow the line that I drew on there as close as I can. Now all this extra slab here on the side, I'm going to be using this for the bottom of my cup. So I'm not going to squish that all up. I'm just going to set it aside. And now I've got my design. So the next step is to flip it over. So I'm making sure my pattern is on the outside. And then I'm going to grab the form that I prepared. So if you're using the PVC pipe, or again, you could use the tin can. I'm going to place it on one side. I'm going to grab that clay and just start rolling it around that cup form until I get it wrapped around the form. And you can see that creates a nice cylinder shape. But you can also see that I'm going to have to slip and score the seam together there. So now I've got to make sure that I have some slip and I have something to score with. So I've got my slip and I've got my fork. And what I'm going to do is just kind of unwrap this a little bit and then run my fork kind of up the seam here and rough up the surface of the clay. Now this clay is pretty wet, so it will probably be fine, but I do need to add a little bit of slip and score. And then I'm going to start to make that clay pinch together. So I might lose a little bit of my texture right through here, but that's okay. I'm just going to go really slowly and start to blend that together so that I get a nice, so that's joined together nicely, okay? Now that I've got this together, I need to put a bottom on my cup so that I can actually drink out of it. So what I'm going to do is just maybe move my PVC pipe up a little bit so that I don't have any of this kind of paper towel in the way. So get that paper towel out of the way. And then I'm going to use my extra slab here to create the bottom. Now the easiest way to do this is to find the circular cookie cutters, okay? And what I'm going to do is find a cookie cutter that fits not on the inside circle, but on the outside circle of this cylinder shape that I've created. So for instance, oh, I'm trying to do this with one hand, hold on. For instance, that one, that would still be too small. It's not touching the outside edge. So I need to go up a size here. Let's try this next one. Now that one looks about right, but it's still maybe a little small. And that one is just about right. So I'm going to go ahead and use the biggest circle. And with my texture, I'm going to go ahead, this extra piece, I'm going to push down and then twist. Just give it a turn and it will come right out. I'm going to press it out carefully. Move this aside. I'm going to flip the texture so that it's on the back side here. And then making sure my paper towel's kind of not in the way and my PVC pipe is pushed up just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and fit the bottom on there. So I do need to slip and score both this edge here and also a little bit around the edge of this bottom slab. So I'm going to go ahead and do this part. And then just the edge here. So let me kind of show you what that looks like. I don't want to score this whole thing up because then I would have a bunch of marks on the bottom of my cup and I'd have to smooth all that out. I'm just hitting the edge here with a little bit of my slip, and this slip is really not quite wet enough, but I'm going to go through here and just do the edge. Now that I've got it all slipped and scored, and my paper towel hopefully is out of the way, take a little minute here and get that out of the way. Get out of the way, paper towel. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and just set this right on top, making sure it's nice and even, and I'm going to push it down just a little bit and maybe just give it a little bit of a tap tap. And you can see I still need to spend some time blending this seam together. So I'm going to go in here with my thumb and just push that together and start to blend. Another thing that can help me blend is to get a wet sponge and go around the edge. So I've got my coffee cup all built. It's got a bottom on it. Now I'm ready to take out the form. What I'm going to do is stick my hand down in the middle. I'm going to open up my fingers and then kind of pull and wiggle my hand out. So let me show you what that looks like. Push my hand down in, kind of open up my fingers, start to wiggle, 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 and then the form will come right out of there. Now at this point, I need to be really careful. I don't want to smush this. I've just spent all this time building it, but I do have a seam on the inside of the cup. So hopefully you can see that there. So what I do need to do is get in here with a wet paintbrush or maybe a small wooden tool, and I need to blend that seam from the inside, just like I spent some time blending it on the outside. And a wet paintbrush works really well for this process to smooth that bottom seam and the side seam. And then the last step I'm going to do for today's build is I'm going to take a wet sponge and really smooth the lip of my cup really, really nicely. Okay, I don't want anyone cutting their mouth on a sharp cup. Now these cups could also be used for like paintbrush holders, makeup brush holders, pens and pencils. I use them on my desk for that. But especially if you're actually going to drink out of it, you really need to make sure that the lip of your cup is very, very smooth. So take a minute and smooth that out nicely. Now I'm going to attach a handle to this cup, but I show you how to make handles in a different video, which I will link for you below. So my last step for today is to put it on a wear board and in a bag. So now that you've got your cup all built, we're actually going to attach the handles on day 2 of this project. And there's all different kinds of handles you can make. So again, that will be in a different video. But for now, I just need to get this put away for this class period. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully move it to a wear board, just like that. And then I'm going to put it in a bag. Now you might ask a partner to kind of help you with this part because it's a little tricky to kind of hold the bag and push it in there. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's my bag. I'm just going to open this up and carefully, I'm going to just slide that in, okay? Now I don't want to leave the bag open like this because that will make my cup dry out too much. I want it to get a little bit more set up or leather hard so I can put the handle on there, but I don't want it to get bone dry. So I want to make sure that I tuck the edge of the bag under like this, or that I get one of the red twist ties and twist tie it up. Now for some reason it's a long weekend or you know you're not going to be here next class period, it's a good idea to put a little bit of wet paper towel in the bag before you wrap it up. But if you are going to attach the handle just the next class period, then it can go in a bag without a wet paper towel. And then the last step that I'd like you to do for this project when you wrap it up is to take a Sharpie and write your name on the bag. We do have to store these in the cabinet, and by the end of the class, there's going to be 30-some bags. They're going to look all the same. So it's really important that you write your name on the bag, or you can write it on a piece of tape and put the tape on the bag so that you know it's your cup. Now, if you were using the template instead of the form, this process looks almost exactly the same. The only difference is that you don't have anything to wrap the clay around. Basically, you just take the clay slab just like this and you just sort of form it. You use a cookie cutter bottom, and you would want to put a texture on it before you cut out the shape. All right, well now it's day 2 of my cup project. So my cup has been in a bag now over one class period, and it has gotten what's called more leather hard. So I can pick it up now, I can move it around, and it's a little bit more set up. One of the things, again, that's very important is to grab a nice stiff wet paintbrush and go around this inside bottom seam here and the side seam here. And just make sure that your craftsmanship is really nice and that there's no scoring marks. And that part of that is a hygiene issue. So if I actually want to wash this and use it, if I have a bunch of scratch marks down here, that can harbor some bacteria when I go to actually use this and wash it. So it's really important that that inside be very, very smooth. So now I've went ahead and made a handle. Now there's a different video about handles that I'll be sharing with you, but I went ahead and made just a kind of a tapered coil handle here. So I want to talk about attaching your handle and getting this ready. So because it's tapered, I have one side down here that's a little bit skinnier, and then it's a little bit fatter up here. And when you're making your handle, you want to make it a half heart shape. So what I'm going to do is grab either a needle tool or a fettling knife, and I'm going to cut it kind of at an angle like this, and kind of like that, and start to think about what that's going to look like on my cup, okay? And so as far as placement on the cup, you want to put your handle kind of where you put the two slabs together. So I have this kind of this ugly spot here. So this is where my handle is going to be attached. So I want to look and see, you know, how is that looking? Is the handle big enough? One thing, you know, mistake I see students make is they make the handles much too thin of a coil. So remember, you want it to be about the thickness of a hot dog. So once I kind of have it created, I want to make sure that when I'm attaching it that the handle is straight. Sometimes students will put handles on, or I've even done this, and all of a sudden I realize, oh, it's really crooked. So make sure that it's laying straight and look at it from up on top and from the side, and then go ahead and make your slip and score. So please use a fork and make sure that you're really digging into the body of the cup. So I'm cross-hatching and going back and forth and really roughing up that surface. If your cup has any problems, it's usually where the handle is attached. Sometimes they can break off. So it's very important that we add a lot of slip and that we really, scratch up where we are attaching this. Then I can go ahead and start to place this on there. Notice I'm putting my hand on the inside and I'm using that to push against so that I really push that handle on there. I want to make sure there's no air pockets in between the cup itself, that slab, and in between where the handle attaches. Now, obviously, I wouldn't want to leave it like that. I would want this all to be blended. So I can grab a wooden tool. I can also get a wet paintbrush to help me, but sometimes I need a little extra clay as well. So that's where the little baby coils come in. So grab a little soft clay, make a tiny little baby coil, and use that right in here in this seam to kind of wrap around this interior seam here. And sometimes you need it right up here as well. Sometimes I need it right here. So the more blending that you do, the better chance that your handle is not going to break off of here. So now that I've got the baby coils in there, now I can get in here again with my wooden tool. I can even use the back of my paintbrush if I'm lazy and don't want to get a wooden tool. And I really want to push some soft clay in there and blend this around. I don't want to see any, I don't want to see where it's attached. I want there to be any indication of that seam. I want this to be really smooth and blended really, really well. And then I also want my handle itself to be very smooth. So I might take a wet sponge and just really make sure that all of this connecting points and the handle itself is very, very smooth. Also, make sure you can actually fit a couple fingers in there to hold your cup, because you don't want your fingers smashed against hot liquid. So for instance, mine is a little, I need to shape it a little bit more. I need to actually be able to fit a couple fingers in there. That's the whole point of a handle, is that you don't smash your fingers against that hot liquid. That's why when you go to like a coffee shop, they give you those coffee sleeves, right? And that's why we have a handle on our mugs, so that we don't burn our fingers against hot liquid. So that's looking pretty good. I definitely could keep working on it. It's a little soft, but you definitely want to do a lot of blending. Make sure to add those little baby coils. Make sure to use a lot of slip and score. And then the last thing I would want to do is put some kind of markation here on the bottom of my cup so that I know it's mine. So your initials, your name works the best. And so that way we all know whose cups are whose, because sometimes they can look very, very similar. So that's the basics of how you make a handled mug, you guys. I know you're gonna love this project and you're gonna be able to use this mug for years to come, or it makes a really good gift. Thanks for hanging out with me in the ceramics room. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.